Inside the office, a man worked quietly until he noticed that the clock already read 5:30, so he immediately stood up to grab his bag and bid farewell to his colleagues. After he left, they started talking about how he really went home on time in this situation, and they speculated that it probably has something to do with the game, which made them surprised to see him so desperate like that, even though they think it's just some stupid game. Later, the man finally arrived home a bit faster today, given the short 10-minute walk from his workplace to the steel castle that he built for the purpose of Dunix, also known as Dungeon Explorer Chronicle. After donning his VR gear, he immersed himself in the game that featured beautiful graphics and filled with action that took over the VR MMO game genre. Back when it first launched, the producer wasn't famous, and there's even times when the game went unnoticed. But with absolute quality and added contents, it has become such a big game that there is no gamer that doesn't know it. Inside the game, he suddenly felt a presence behind him and remembered that he left in a rush earlier, so he saved in a weird place. With that, the monster immediately attacked him, so he drew his sword in return. And just like that, he was also addicted to this game. Afterwards, he remembered that since Dunix's update is at 6:00 p.m., and it really helps that his work is over at 5 o'clock, since in fact, he intentionally chose that workplace for this reason, especially for today's event, which he couldn't afford to miss, since he had been selected as a beta tester for the upcoming large-scale update, which is a unique opportunity where a select group of users gets to test the system in-game before its official launch, to help identify issues and uncover any bugs. Aside from that, you will also be rewarded if you did good in the event. So for a Dunix layer, or rather to him, he can't help but get super excited hearing about it. After that, he decided to continue even though he thinks that it's still a little early. With that, he teleported to the area that will become the event venue, and even though he initially thought that he came early, he noticed that other players were already present and were talking about showing their skill, and how things are probably going to get amplified in some way, so they suggested taking it easy. Meanwhile, he felt that their aura is putting him off, so he decided that he will try avoiding them. However, he noticed his hand shaking, so it made him wonder if he was nervous. Still, he knows that feeling well since he definitely wants the beta test rewards, so he assured himself that it's going to be fine, since he is strong enough and that he will definitely win. Other than that, no matter how much the average players cooperate, they are just still common players, but the testers are different, since the testers are the few players that are able to glimpse the future. And as a dungeon explorer, this is the only event you absolutely can't miss out, so he is convinced that this event will definitely magnify it. But he is also certain that he is going to be okay because he is not just an average player. Afterwards, he noticed that it's already 6 o'clock and vowed that no matter what the event is, he will face it. But he was left stunned when he finally saw what it was. In the morning, the man woke up as usual and went to work. However, his colleagues start questioning that he is acting strange recently, even though he is really strange, since he still goes home on time and his desk is also still filled with merch. But another colleague added that he knows what the other one means, because he thought that the man looks like he is not desperate anymore. So they wonder if he is already bored with that game of his, but he still goes home. However, the truth is that a couple of weeks have already passed since the event, and in conclusion, that event was pure hell, because a huge dragon suddenly fell and evaporated 10% of the players, and without delay, it started firing off huge lasers randomly, that even if you tried to counter it, his thick skin prevents your attack from dealing any decent damage. But after sacrificing half of the participants, they were able to defeat the dragon. However, that was only a prologue because the event venue suddenly collapsed. From there, they have to find a way to exit the Death Gamer, and not to mention, there is also a time limit, and also a lot of instant kill traps. Aside from that, they also faced formidable opponents, which unleashed an attack that sent everyone flying. Swiftly, he used his sword to prevent being crushed and disarmed the monster that allowed him to charge forward. However, his advance was interrupted by someone who knocked down the monster instead, and there he saw that it was actually a girl. Nonetheless, the only thing they can count on is their luck. He managed to defeat the monster so that he could escape, and with that, there is no one that could clear that other than him. Upon reaching home, he immediately took a shower and finished eating before he put on his VR gear. As he waited, he finally received the update mail, so he quickly checked what's in it but was startled instead with a notice regarding the license agreement, stating that if he starts the game, he will get transported. So he wondered if it's some sort of setting or if it was real, but he thought that it's impossible and speculated that it's probably just some expression or something like that, since after all, these admins are all crazy and the same thing goes for him because he plays their game. However, he tells himself that he shouldn't think too deeply into this. Soon after, a notice asking him to choose a character suddenly showed up, offering the options of auto-picking or customizing the character, which made him feel that this is kind of nerve-wracking, and seeing the choices made him guess that beta testers can't use existing characters. However, he thinks it's a pain to do it, so he decided that he will just let the game pick his appearance and abilities, and if he doesn't like it, then he can just remake it. With the installation completed, he decided to start immediately, and upon entering the game, he took notice of his surroundings and recognized the familiar presence of an old man in front of him, who's congratulating the first year for enrolling in the academy and stating that as a proud high school adventurers school of their nation, he assured them that they have the latest knowledge and the best environment so that they can concentrate and polish everyone's talent here. That's why they expect all of them to meet the people's expectations. But aside from the old man, he also noticed the red-haired boy and the students that stand out at the front. With that, he realized that this was Dunix's opening. He then noticed that with this super high-quality graphic, they seem to have replaced a couple of chapters in this large update, which is as he expected from the largest game company in this country. However, it strikes him that this might be some kind of joke, because even though he knows that Dunix has the best quality out there as a game, but still, if you look hard enough it should be obvious that it's just CG. So he then calmed down the Super Dunix player in him and decided to gather his thoughts first. And that would be what this world really is, because at the very least, this is not the Dunix game. Since in order to play Dunix, you need an exclusive glove and goggles to play it. But of course, you can't tell if you have them or not. So if this is not a dream, he guesses that he was really transported. And assuming that this world is a recreation of Dunix, he wonders what happened to his body. But to be honest, he actually has no clue about this one. However, for the most part, there were two patterns he observed. The first is that only his consciousness is transported here, while the second possibility is that his whole body was overwritten to this new one. But whichever one it is, if he can't log out, then he won't understand anything. Nevertheless, the way to log out from Dunix is after moving to the classroom, so the only thing he can do now is to wait and progress the story. But lastly, he wonders if he really wants to go home. Afterwards, they announced that the Adventurers High School entrance ceremony had ended, and after this, there will be homeroom, so they urged them to return to their own class and to leave in order of their class. With that, the announcer called for Class E to exit, so he then realized that he is in Class E. However, amongst all 5 classes, Class E has the lowest status, but he guesses that it's better than getting bullied by those arrogant guys from the higher status class. While on his way, he asked himself if he really wanted to return to his previous world, to face the things like working and rent, but other than that he also got a bunch of other reasons to return. But on the other hand, he also wants to overpower this world, since his biggest dream is to get involved with his favorite character. Not to mention, the main character and most of the heroines are also enrolled in this class, so he was transported in a favorable condition. However, there is also a chance that his previous body is already gone, so he decided that even if he can't log in when he reaches his classroom, he is going to enjoy this world to its fullest. But if he found a way home, then he will just have to think about it then. However, he feels something weird and strangely out of breath, so he thought that it's due to the country's best adventurer high school stairs. However, he suddenly stopped when he saw himself in the mirror and questioned what he saw, since this body and face is from someone he knows, because this person approached one of the heroines over and over again and was harassing her. Then he also harassed the main character for getting too close with her. So finally, he was purged and was forced to get expelled, so he became the villain character known as Narmise Yuta, and also known with his nickname Botho. Because of that, he thought that this is the worst, and this 100-kilogram body is enough to be a debuff. So his classmates behind him then started talking about him, and guessed that he couldn't handle the stairs. But aside from that, he remembered that the heroine that Botho approached was Haze Kaoru, the champion of the nationwide kendo tournament. Her academics were also high, and without a doubt she excels in sport and school, while also being both intelligent and beautiful. On top of that, she doesn't treat anyone any differently, so she is a person of character to all except Botho. Since of all things, Botho harassed her even before the entrance ceremony, so during the opening on the stairs, she already hates him. Not to mention, Botho isn't even the main character's rival or anything, so even he has no feelings for this character, because he isn't strong and just an obstacle, which made him an unpleasant mob character, and making him think that he shouldn't have picked auto-pick back then. But after this, Kaoru will become the core of the main characters and the rest of the class. And since Kaoru already hates him, he plans to not do anything conspicuous even though it seems suspicious, including this world. Suddenly, he felt something in his chest that made him wonder what was that just now, because he felt uneasy. However, it doesn't feel like his own emotions, which made him speculate that some of both those memories and feelings remain. So now both those memories added to his problem of being hated by the heroine and having a body weight over 100 kilograms, which increased his problem. Nevertheless, he reminded himself that it's no use if he keeps thinking like this, because the stress will make him go insane. So for now, he decided to just hurry up and go to class, since there might still be a chance that he can log out. But the fact that he got transported in the first place means that this is no longer the game world he knows. So now that he is Botho, the Dunix's storyline will break, as he decided that he will just need to get on good terms with Kaoru. And that would be a nice thought if he did say so himself. But when he finally arrived inside the classroom, Kaoru's eyes met his. However, her eyes were immediately filled with contempt and hatred for him. Thus, his first time being transported to another world, and his second life playing Dunix for who knows how many times is starting. After locking eyes with him, Kaoru immediately turned her head around, so he realized that she really despised him. After that, he looked around and remembered that this school's seat placement is based on grades. That's why he can't just sit randomly wherever he likes. With that, he finally found his seat and saw that it's in the furthest back. So he realized that being in Class E, in the furthest back means that he is the lowest ranking student. However, in this adventurer's school, the entrance exam here is 100 times harder than others, since this is a super elite school. So even though he doesn't know how Botho did it, he is certain that Botho somehow won against that terrifying entrance exam. And since getting enrolled here alone is incredible, he should at least have some confidence. Afterwards, a man suddenly entered the class and urged everyone to take their seats, because they are going to start homeroom session, but he will first talk about himself and then about the school. With that, he found out that the man's name is Hajime and is an alumni of Adventurers University, but he only did a simple self-introduction, and then he started explaining about the school. Up until this point, he noticed that it's still following Dunix's scenario. However, even though it's a Dunix's scenario, he thought that witnessing it firsthand in reality has a completely different information density, because he can feel the weight of every word that Hajime is saying, and it's like he is a soldier first then a teacher. Aside from that, his classmates' anxiety is also clear that he can almost touch it, but of course that is how it's supposed to be. Since speaking of adventurers in this world, it's a promising profession that gets the limelight in this country, and a name that is given to those who are allowed to dive into dungeons. Just like this school, and the competition there is also really hard. So just being a student from this school has its own privileges, and it certainly is more useful information and not just gossip. But to him who just came to this world, it doesn't feel real to him. However, if he can't go back for a while, it will be better if he starts thinking seriously about his career. Fortunately, as he expected from an elite school, there are a lot of options to do after graduating. But of course, there is always the option to continue Adventurer's School, and there is also plenty of scouting done by companies. That's because students dive into dungeons as lessons. To begin with, Dunix got its name from that since they use dungeon exploring as the theme. So it was necessary to make the game have a high focus on dungeons. And in the world of Dunix, resources from the dungeon help support the energy industry. So for companies and institutions that want to progress their dungeon research, this is the best place to hunt them. And for the sake of his future, he wants to dive more aggressively, but might be able to do so, since as to what Hajime told them about challenging a dungeon, they would normally work together with their friends and proceed, so that's why they have classmates. With that, he also urged them to use this opportunity to the fullest and devote themselves to it. After it, he informed them that he is going to hand over the terminal, so they must come forward when he calls their name. Shortly after, Botho's name was called last and the terminal was finally handed to him. But with that being said, if he can return to his previous world, then all his worry was for nothing. He then observed that this terminal that looks like a wristwatch is the menu in Dunix, along with usual smartphone features and many others, where you can check the current player's status and also logging out. But when he opens the terminal, he first sees his own current status, and the thing he didn't know through experience is that this status is seriously super low, which left him all gloomy and feel like he is starting to get used to these problems starting to stack up. Still, he hoped that the logout function exists, so he started looking for it. However, there is no logout. Botho realized that he can't really go back and thought that it's alright if he can't go back, because he has always dreamed of coming to the world of Dunix after all. However, he was transported as Botho. Nevertheless, he noticed that he has this skill glutton. Aside from that, he has also played Dunix since he was a student, and even after becoming an adult, he still kept on playing. But even after he experienced and won that hellish tester event, even he didn't know this skill, and thought that to get the skill from the start like this is actually pretty rare. And when it comes to good skills, you will want it even if you need to reroll for it. But for this glutton skill, he has absolutely no idea on how to use it. But judging by the words, it seems like a skill used to eat huge amounts of food, so it made him wonder if he got this skill because he was fat. And with that, he wants to hurry up and learn other skills to overwrite this one, since he can't go back anyway, so he wants to go to the dungeon as soon as possible. Suddenly, the 3 guys from Class D arrived, which alarmed them. But the long-haired guy suddenly called them pathetic lot of Class E, and informed them that this man besides him is from Class D and his name is Karya Isamu, who is going to pick someone among them, and they will become his subordinate. So he urged everyone to show them their status and skills. However, they were called out and were interrupted by Kaoru, who reprimanded him for suddenly coming and picking subordinates like that. She also tells them that even if they were classmates, that doesn't mean they will have to show it to him, which left Botho shocked, while their other classmates sided with her and said that he is making no sense, while also asking who he was, and pointed out that his class isn't much higher than theirs. However, the long-haired guy suddenly approached Kaoru and asked if she thinks that they're equal. So he informed them that they have been in the school since middle school, and they've been diving into dungeons since they were 12 years old. So compared to all of them who are only level 1, their levels are literally different. So he clarified that telling them to show their terminal is not a request, but it's an order. After he said those words, the whole classes felt an intense atmosphere that even Botho immediately figured out what this is. After that, Kaoru was too stunned to speak, including the whole class. So the guy then asked if that's all, and if there is anyone that still wants to complain. But since no one said anything, he commanded them to quietly show them their terminal. Meanwhile, Botho knew that he used aura, which can only be used in special places like in dungeons and towards others with a lower level, since this is a skill that is used to intimidate, especially monsters and such. Nevertheless, he finally knew that this is how it feels like getting affected by it. Suddenly, the guy called for the first one and pointed at Botho, whom he calls fat, and the one in the failure seat. He then informed him that they are going to see his first, but his other words didn't matter as Botho only remembered the word fat. Nonetheless, he urged him to quickly come and show his terminal. After seeing it, the guy sighed and pointed out that his status is way too low, while also adding that he is a literal mob, so he doesn't need him. Hearing him say those words made Botho get the urge to punch his face, but he just decided to go back after his weak stats are confirmed, and to also just act like the fat guy he is. After he left, the man then became interested with one of the students and declared that she is next, which first confused her, but she obeyed him, so he then asked what her name is, and she answered that she is Sakura, so he then asked her to show him her terminal. Meanwhile, Botho knows who she is, including her nickname Pink-chan, since she is one of the heroines in Dunix, and she is also a special playable character. Through her perspective, you can find the male character's route, and she is also one of the reasons why Dunix was a big hit. After that, the man pointed out she is level 1 as expected and her abilities are honestly questionable, but since he thought that she was cute, he would give her a special treatment and let her into their party, but this left her confused and nervous, while everyone is paralyzed by the sheer difference in power. So Botho speculated that even if everyone in Class E grouped together won't be able to defeat Isamu, but still Pink-chan won't be taken away by them. The man then approached her and questioned what's with her look when she should be happy, but he was stopped, and the reason is this is the scene where the main character shows up, who tells him that she obviously doesn't like that. After being stopped, the man immediately asked why and pointed out that she is obviously happy. He also questioned the other guy, asking what was wrong with him. In response, he declared his name is Yuma and proclaimed himself as the soon-to-be strongest man in the school, or at least he hoped so. But hearing this left Kaoru amazed, while Isamu found himself intrigued. However, the other two laugh at him and ask if he is serious, while also saying that it seems like he doesn't know his place. But suddenly, an immense aura was radiated by Isamu as he approached Yuma, and left everyone in a total shock state, as he continued by telling Yuma that he is just some kid that doesn't know what a real adventurer is, that's why he needs to stop getting ahead of himself. But his subordinate then tells him that it can't be helped, and it's probably some nonsense coming from a Class E small fry. He then replied that he was right, and asked Yuma if he is fine with a month's time because he will personally test his statement on the strongest, in a duel that has a safety rule, so even if he loses he won't die. He also pointed out that there's a lot of guys as strong as monsters there, so if he can't even beat him, it will be impossible to call himself the strongest. So he then asks him if he was wrong, but Yuma answers that he is not and that he will accept it, which shocked everyone, while it only pissed off Isamu. So he then left and declared that he will remember it, while also telling Yuma that he hopes he is ready to lose an arm. After they left, His classmates immediately jumped on him and commented that they really respect him. So he thanked them and clarified that he was just actually in the heat of the moment. While Sakura, on the other hand, asks him if he did it for her sake, but he assured her that it's not at all, and that he was just thinking of saying it. Meanwhile, Kaoru was left thinking that someone noble like him is the kind of adventurer she wanted to be, and the big reason she enrolled here is because she admires those kinds of things. But at the same time, she also did it because she wanted to stay away from him, from his fiancée Narumi, nicknamed Botho. Back then, she used to ask him why he is walking far away from her, but he only answered that it's because he can't go any faster than that. But this only made her think more that she liked it better when they were kids, since back then he was a bit of a coward, but he is a lot more honest than he is now. He would also give her a gentle smile, and when she was picked on by the boys, he would even intervene and protect her. But he is now just a shadow of his former self, so getting away from him became her motivation to take the entrance exam. So when she received the letter and found out, she was happy. However, he informed her that he was also accepted into Adventurer's School, so he is now looking forward to the next 3 years, which made her hesitantly reply to him that it's amazing, but she actually can't believe that he chased her and entered the Adventurer's School as well. However, she remembered that his family just runs a standard general store, while his parents and his cute little sister often worry about her, so she guessed that he probably didn't do anything illegal, and she was kind of seeing him in a new light now. But suddenly, his parents beg her to teach him her sword skills even though they know they are troubling her. With that, she accepted it since Botho himself sometimes asks for the training himself. So this time she couldn't refuse the request because his parents have always been good to her since she was little. Also, she considered it as a reward for him for passing the entrance exam. After that, both of them began training, and it made her wonder just how much effort his lazy self had put in, since until they start training, he won't limit his food, he won't wake up early, and even if he woke up and started running, he'll just complain, just like how he suddenly asks her if they can stop already, and pointed out that since they will get stamina from leveling up, then this is all pointless. So she informed him that from level 4 onwards, it will be more difficult to level up, so training would help, but he only answered that he can do that once he levels up a bit, and complains that this is all a pain, since he worked himself so hard at the last minute, and managed to get into Adventurer's School. So he then questioned why he had to go through all this now. However, this is Kaoru's reason, even though she thinks it's really amazing to get into Adventurer's School. But if he tries to argue against the higher class or the upperclassmen like this, she is certain that the Adventurer's School won't take it lightly. With Kaoru apologizing to him and assuring him to match his pace, is something she thought he might be thinking that she will say to him. And that is because she has always been like that. So in the end, she will somehow manage his composure, and it's probably because he has the fact that he passed to back it up. Nevertheless, she speculated that he became like this because of her, and at least to some extent that is what she thinks. However, she thinks that she should change the way he thinks, since the reason why he thinks he has so many leeways is probably her fault for letting him do that. So if that's the case, she decided to tell him that she will just leave him behind. And even though he tried calling out to her, she didn't stop, and now it made her wonder if only he had some guts like Yuma. Meanwhile, Botho was just sorting out his paper when Kaoru suddenly approached him and asked him what was wrong with him today, but he only stared at her, so she urged him to say something. With that, he apologized to her and informed her that he needed to do something today, which first confused her, but then answered okay. However, it's actually been 2 weeks since the training started, and she observed that he has shown no signs of doing it. So she thinks that since the person himself doesn't seem motivated at all, then it's about time they stop the training, since she is just actually continuing it because she promised his parents. But her love for him is completely gone, and that is why she needs to level up as fast as possible, so she doesn't have any free time to hang out with him. But in order to do that, she needs to solve her biggest and most difficult problem as soon as possible, since the reason she and him are fiancés is because of the written magical marriage contract. So as long as that exists, she can't shake off the fact that she is his fiancé, and sooner or later, he will lust for her body, and he could even order her to do indecent things. So before that happens, she needs to void the marriage contract as soon as possible. Sometime after the Adventurer's School, you will get to visit the heroine Kaoru's house as a player, and as he was heading there, he noticed the general store, which he thought was normal, and wondered if he really could enter there, because he feels kind of reluctant to enter a house he doesn't know, even though it's technically his house. Suddenly, someone tapped his back, and there he noticed a lady who pointed out that he was already home, but he was shocked to see her, including the girl who called him Big Brother and welcomed him home. That gives him mixed emotions. Later, inside his room, he pointed out that there is no mistake that this is Botho's room, or at least it should be. However, he observed that he got this weird nostalgic feeling from his room and family for a while now, so he guesses that it's probably the work of Botho's mind. In other words, in the reminiscent of those two heroines' visuals, then those two are Botho's family. But that information wasn't in the game, and this world is filling in those missing information, which he thought could end up bad because the advantages of him being a player might become completely useless. But this made him want to hurry more and dive into a dungeon, since he wanted to test something. Suddenly, he felt something with his body again and noticed the stuff scattered around, so he then decided to just clean up for now. While cleaning, he felt something weird because he vaguely knew where everything was. Initially, he thought that Botho's feeling was only a nuisance, but he now guesses that it's not, and thought that it's kind of useful now to remember things. He also thought that there's a possibility that one day he can freely remember things as he wishes, since he was also concerned with Kaoru's invitation earlier. Nevertheless, he suddenly noticed a paper that he found when he was cleaning, and saw that it was a magical contract between him and Kaoru. But no matter how you look at it, this is just some kid's scribble. So just for this one, he decided to count on Botho and asked him to give him his power. With that, he saw his younger self writing on a paper with Kaoru. However, he can't remember it anymore, but he at least got the feeling of it. So now he knows that this was important to him and decided that he will take it just in case. But now that he is finally done with cleaning, he guesses that it's time for him to go into the dungeons. Inside, he informed the receptionist that he wanted to sign up, but she looked at him for a moment and asked him if he had something to identify himself. However, she noticed his terminal and immediately apologized to him. But now that she realized that he is a student from the adventurer school, she then asked him to put his name and ID in the form. After that, she informed him that she's going to issue it now, and asked him to wait a moment, to which he answered yes, while also thinking that she probably had a thought that he is just some guy. Soon after, she thanked him for waiting and instructed him to take the ticket over there, so he then thanked her. Afterwards, he noticed the huge black door in front of them where a bunch of adventurers are lining up to enter. Finally, it was his turn to enter and continued to walk inside just like what others did. With that, he finally knew what it feels like to pass through the barrier between the world and the dungeon. Nevertheless, he observed that there were so many people here that it became like some kind of tourist spot. So he decided to go deeper, and as he progressed quite a bit, he noticed that there are less people after coming this far. Suddenly, he sensed something behind him and discovered a newly spawned monster, which is a slime. So he then readied his bat and swung it at the slime that immediately disappeared and left a drop behind. With that, he finally experienced his first real dungeon and first dungeon subjugation, which made him exclaim that he really is in the world of Dunnex. However, the rate in the early levels is bad, but he also wants to test something out. So if it's like in the map, the slime room can be found there, where the slimes that enter this room merge together and grow. On top of that, its skills are basically the same, so if you want to grind your levels, this is the right room. Suddenly, a slime appeared in front of him, who then asked him if he wanted to fight, but he just walked away from it, so it followed him while also asking what it should do, so the other slimes then decided to combine. After that, he finally faced the combined slimes and immediately used his bat to attack them, and thought that as a Dunnex player, he will just let himself follow his instinct, so he will just keep swinging his bat, and then he will finally level up, which he successfully did. Suddenly, he felt a rush inside his body, which made him realize that this is the feeling of his stats rising because of a level up, and thought that he might get addicted to this, but also without intending to brag, he believes that he no longer needs to feel inferior in class anymore. Nevertheless, he thought that something is weird because of the early stages, all players use this place as a hunting ground, so he wondered why this place is so empty. However, since he was able to enter here, then it doesn't look like this place is off limits. So he then thought that it was perfect for experimenting, since the concept of skills also exists in Dunnex. But the basics are if you don't raise your levels, you can't use them. However, there's only 3 exceptions. The first one is the one that was used by the guy from Class D, which is the aura. The second one is the power to produce a light source called a torch. And the last one is literally a small healing. So currently, he can only use these 3. And either by using a shortcut key or just by moving his body, he can activate it. So he then tried moving his body on his own to activate it that way and also used the manual activation. After that, he noticed that there's a little difference between the game and this world, because after trying out the manual activation it went surprisingly well. With this surprising difference, he thought that it would be fine to try something out. So he then looks around his surroundings, and then swings his bat while shouting void/shock. However, nothing happened, which he already expected because he hadn't learned that after all. But suddenly, his bat emitted a light and it triggered the void/shock, which left him amazed while also not noticing that he was being thrown away because of how powerful it was. After that, he finally woke up and noticed the nurse in front of him, whom he immediately asked where he was. So she answered that it's the guild's medical office and informed him that he ran out of magical power and was found unconscious around some slimes. But he tried to clarify that she got it wrong and explained that this is his first time going in a dungeon, so he was kind of lost and was tired walking, including the fact that it was also his entrance ceremony today. But after that, he was awake the next day after he entered the dungeon, so it was already Saturday evening. Nonetheless, he didn't tell her that he fainted because he ran out of magical power, considering the opponent and him weren't really charging in too deep, since for some reason he activated a skill that he hasn't learned, and if he said that, she would probably think he is crazy in the head. So now he currently has 4 debuffs: his body, the memories of Botho that he sees, being hated by one of the major characters in the original story, and his low stats. And now it's trying to add a 5th. Afterwards, he finally arrived home and was about to eat dinner when he noticed the portion of his food was too much. So he then apologized and requested his mother to lower his portion from now on. But his mother questioned him what's wrong and informed him that she just made their favorite carrot and croquette, which made him want to answer that it's because of those, but he only replied that it's because he wants to go on a diet, so he wants his food to be more vegetable focused. But his sister questioned him if he is able to eat vegetables now, so he was speechless at first, and then explained that ever since he entered adventurer school, he thinks that he has been more aware of it. His father then pointed out that it's true that he is a little chubby, but his sister on the other hand thinks that he is perfect just now, which made him want to question this family. However, after 1 month, there will be an Osamu and Yuma duel, so Class E are probably trembling in fear about this, since even if they pass the Karya event, according to the story the higher class upperclassmen will eventually be preparing for a world-scale war. That's why he needs to start preparing for all of that as well, and that he needs to level up so he can gather more information about this world, about this mysterious transportation and becoming Botho, since at any rate, he just wants information. But in order to do that, he thinks that this family is a little bit troublesome right now. Later, he started writing his piling problems and thinking about the transport which he currently has no clue about. So the first thing that he wanted to understand was the activation of the unlearned skill yesterday, since first of all, that shouldn't be possible. However, he thought that being able to do something that he originally can't is a good thing, but the problem is whether other people can do it or not. So if perhaps that he is the only one that can use this in this word, there is a chance that he could throw the story into chaos. And if the story goes against the one he knows, then it will be a problem for him. So he decided that he will first move the skill training's priority up, and guess that he will go to the guild again tomorrow. In the end, the things he wants to do just keep piling up. The next morning, before he left, his mother asked him if he's sure that he is fine to go because of what just happened to him yesterday, but he assured her that he will be fine, so he then bid farewell. But his sister suddenly stopped him and asked him if he was going to the dungeon today, so she then requested that he take her with him. However, he immediately slammed the door and left her sulking. Afterwards, he finally arrived outside the guild, where he accidentally bumped into someone, so he immediately apologized. But to his surprise, it was the long-haired guy from Class D who accused him of suddenly spacing out. So he just apologized since there's also bullying Class E that he doesn't want to get involved in. Suddenly, the guy asked him if the person behind him was his companion, so he then realized that it was his little sister, who immediately scolded the guy because she thinks that he should apologize if he bumps into someone, and also pointed out that he is an adventurer, but he doesn't even know that. But she only made him mad, so Botho immediately asked her to stop it. However, the guy simply ignored them and departed while also advising him to get his best for Class E once he left. Both of them finally felt relieved. However, Botho scolded her and urged her not to show relief, while also asking her why she came. So she replied that it was because he wouldn't take her along, leaving her with no choice but to follow. So she then called him stupid meanie and a small fry slime, which made him guess that things have gotten bothersome, especially if she sees him practicing his skills, because he speculated that she might become intrigued by the aura, and eventually request to join in shooting monsters and have him take her to the dungeons. So he then apologized to her and suggested trying to register her in the guild, but she thought that as a general rule, 15 years old and younger can't enter the dungeon, so she knows that she is just stalling. And after he noticed that she might be thinking about it, she tells him that he was right, so she will be going now, which made him feel glad but also worried. Nevertheless, now that she finally left, he decided to proceed to the guild-affiliated library. And the reason that he came to the guild, or rather to the library, is mainly to search why his skill activated, since one way to cast a spell is by auto-casting, and in this game this is represented as a shortcut key, so he wonders how it works in this world. On the other hand, the other way is by manual casting, just like how he did it last time, but this also has too many mysteries to him. So he just decided to first find out about auto-casting. Afterwards, he finds out that while you use your magic powers you pray, which is simpler than he thought. Now then, continuing with the manual casting for skilled users left him confused, because the description about manual casting are none, even though in reality he was able to do manual casting. So at the very least, using skills that are not learned is not the default in this world, and just as he thought, he is the only one that can use it in this world, or maybe its existence is concealed. But this made it a lot harder for him to use skills, and thought that this would be a precaution so that he can switch places with Yuma, or at least that's one way. However, he can't think properly and doesn't even understand anything, which made him wonder what this world really is. But aside from that, he also observed that there's a bit too many students from their school. Suddenly, he was called by the long-haired guy and exclaimed that it was a coincidence, while also calling him Fatso. But this another encounter with him again just made Botho think that it's such a pain. The guy then saw his book and asked if he still didn't know how to cast his skill, but if he can use them now, then he is certain that he can finally defeat a slime now. But this left him confused. Meanwhile, his sister was actually just outside the guild when she heard someone talking about an unbelievably fat man, that it even made her wonder how he got in the first place. She then told the others that the guy who was defeated by a slime was called Botho. With that, Botho's sister immediately requested her to tell her more about it. Meanwhile, Botho questioned the guy about what he was talking about, so the guy then urged him to stop playing dumb with him because he actually saw it 2 days ago, where he was on the first floor that only had slimes, but he was carried away in a stretcher. With that, he suddenly remembered what happened when he passed out near the slimes, so it really looked like he was defeated by a slime, making him think that this is all just too much. But the man continued to ask him how it was, and pointed out that if he can't even win against a slime, then they would just protect him. But with that, he finally realized that they just basically want someone to carry their stuff. So in the end, there's just a few gophers in Class D, and if there are more slaves, then it will also help the mood in Class E as a whole. So he just thanked him and tried to refuse him. However, he suddenly felt the immense aura from him and noticed that it was only affecting him, so it made him remember that he can't win against this guy. The man then asked if he is not planning to refuse, and pointed out that he is just a small fry from Class E, so he won't say no to their request, because after all, he is the weakest guy in the room, and that in the adventurer school, he is just nothing. After hearing those words, Botho felt like he was sinking, and thought that he was right, that he is nothing, including the skill he is so proud of, and his head-mounted display are all none, because there is no place for him in this school, that they even wish for him to be gone, so it won't be long until he disappears from class, since he knew that in this kind of world, and he knows it more than anyone else. With that, the others started calling him lame for getting defeated by a slime that is in the same grade as him. And this thing brought tears in his eyes, so the guy then asked him what he was crying for, and asked the others to look because he was crying. But suddenly his sister stepped in and ordered the guy to stay away from him, so this made him ponder that there might be something he could cling to and a place for him after all. The guy was left utterly stunned by her action, so she attempted to grab Botho and leave, but the guy intervened and questioned her if she thought she could simply walk away, since he knew that she understood they were in the middle of something because he was currently talking with his older brother. But she only looked at him and was saying bad things about him, so Botho immediately commanded her to just apologize. But this angered the guy more, and the aura he released became more intense, but it did make her flinch and just made her cry. So he then called her out and was about to smack her, when Botho apologized in her position and promised that he is going to tell his little sister to apologize. So he then instructed her to just apologize already, but while telling her to do so, his hand suddenly grabbed the guy, which left him confused and realized that his body moves on its own because of the feeling that Botho has in him. With that, the guy then exclaimed that both of them were trying to oppose him and asked him if he was right. Meanwhile, he noticed that the other students were just watching them, but he then remembered his sister and Botho, so he then tried the autocast and commanded the guy to let go of him. But this only triggered his aura more and thought that he was about to be dead. But suddenly, someone intervened and offered to fight in Botho's stead, leaving them bewildered. However, Botho recognized the person. The guy then questioned her motives, asking why the rank 2 from class, also known as Akira, was getting involved. So she answered that she can't tell him in detail, but it's because both of them are her colleagues, so she wants all of them to get along. So she then asked him if he could, but he only stared at her while Botho waited for his answer. With that, he just let it go, and called her names while also telling Botho that he will remember this. After he left, Akira exclaimed that it was scary, while Botho remembered that she is someone who is strong and ranks second in their grade, who is also known as the beautiful girl that wears full metal armor, but it was actually because she was cursed to have a fat and ugly body, so she wore that armor to hide it, and it made him wonder if that was what she meant by colleague. Suddenly, she pointed at him and commended him for doing a great job hanging in there, including his little sister, so he was left amazed to hear that from her. After that, she bid farewell to them and informed them that she is going to shake off the guys from her family now. After she left, Botho kneeled down in relief while his little sister joined him and apologized to him while also saying thank you to him, but he tells her that he should actually be the one to say that, so he then suggested to her to go somewhere else. Later outside, he asked her why she returned so fast even though he knew that it's already a late question, so she then answered that she didn't mean to go to the guild in the first place, which left him confused, so she explained that she knew from the start that middle schoolers aren't allowed inside the dungeon. However, she also wants to be an adventurer too, but he then asked her why she was that stubborn, so she answered that it's because she just wanted some attention, since she thinks that he became cold to her ever since the entrance ceremony, that he even stopped calling his name, so with lying like that, she knows that it was annoying, so she then apologized for it. However, it made him more certain that it was Botho's feeling that made him jump in like that, and it looks like he cared so much for his little sister, so it made him wonder if Botho is actually a really decent guy. But when he thought about that, he felt a little bad for borrowing his body like this. With that, he apologized to her for being busy with adventurer school and promised to pay more attention to her, so he then called her by her name Kano, and asked her to not do anything dangerous, which made him guess that Botho would act like this. With that, she agreed and finally smiled, so he thought that it looks like it's all good. After that, she asked him to go home together, but he remembered something and instructed her to go home first. So she then asked about him, but since he can enter dungeons now, he exclaimed that he wanted to grind his levels today. Later that night, he finally arrived home where his parents were shocked with how he looked. So his mother then pointed out that unlike 2 days ago, he is clearly injured, while his father on the other hand asked if he was alright if he was hurt, so he answered that he was fine. However, his mother informed him that Kano is really sulking right now, that she started murmuring that if he says it like that, then she can't say no because it was also clear to her that he really wanted to go into the dungeon. So he then tried calling her name, but he noticed that she looked gloomy, so he promised to her that he would take her inside the dungeon one day, and this immediately brightened her mood and asked if what he said was true. So he tells her that if she is aiming for adventurer school, then it will be inevitable, but she immediately made a "that's now what I mean" kind of face. Afterwards, his mother informed them that the food was ready, so they finally started their dinner, while he continued to think about what his goal was. Earlier, he actually dropped to the ground and apologized to the long-haired man, but this only puzzled him, and because of a certain reason Class E receives in hospitality inside the school, and that performance not long ago was a part of it, that they even go out of their way to make people quit, so it was all for nothing when the second rank stepped in, since the problem is because he rebelled in that kind of place. He then clarified to the guy that he was just getting ahead of himself because he was in front of his little sister, and exclaimed that he didn't care about the rumors, but the guy keeps reminding him of their current place, and commands him to shut up because his voice is too loud. Still, he actually doesn't have any ill intent, and he won't defy anything because he thinks that he is just nothing. With that, the guy then understood what kind of pose he has, and exclaimed that since he has some guts, they should go somewhere else, to which he answered yes. However, his goal is actually not to have a good isekai life, but he first needs to investigate the transport, since he wishes to return to his previous world, and also to give someone like him a place since he also wants to protect this family. So while he is at it, he wants to repay Botho too. So tomorrow and starting Monday, the school properly starts, but his current short-time goal is to level up, since he is certain that he will be able to do more things as long as he has power. And with all the events that come, he wants the power to protect him and his family. That's why he doesn't want events that weren't in the game to happen. The next day, as Kaoru was already on her way, Botho was informed by Kano that the same person was here again. It made him wonder who it could be, so he walked to the door to open it, and saw that it was Kaoru. According to Botho's memory before they entered school, Kaoru and him exchanged a mysterious promise to go to school together. But as they were on their way, he found the situation a bit awkward. However, he remembered that Kaoru is the one that hates it the most, yet she remains so faithful about it. So he wondered if it were Botho, he might actually talk more. So he guessed that he would try and talk, so he started thinking about a common topic. But suddenly, she stopped and informed him that she heard he was defeated by a slime. so this immediately led him to speculate that it was the doing of that long-haired guy. However, she suddenly apologized to him and informed him that Yuma and her formed a party, so that is why she can't join him. After hearing that, he suddenly felt something and noticed that Botho was reacting negatively to it and pointed out that he could cry. But she was actually right, because Kaoru joined Yuma's party early on and were together saving the world. On top of that, she is already calling him by his first name Yuma, so it made him feel bad for his dear neighbor Botho. But he observed that it's still progressing like the game, which is convenient for him. Afterwards, he finally entered their classroom, where everyone's eyes were all on him. A guy then approached him and informed him that he heard he was beaten by a slime. With that, he started to notice that the others were also talking about him, since they think that by judging his characteristics it's definitely him. So they even called him lame because a kid can beat a slime, which made them wonder why he lost, and added that there is no denying that he is the lowest of the low. After hearing that, Kaoru tried to reprimand them, but it was Yuma who asked them to not say it like that. Yuma then approached Botho and asked him to not think badly of it, since everyone is just nervous because of what happened on Friday, including him. So Botho simply agreed with him. However, the Yuma in Dunix is the avatar through which the player enters the game and plays, but it's the other way around now because he is empty. So he speculated that if he approached him carelessly, he would say something different from the story, just like now. That's why he needs to be careful. Meanwhile, his classmates then urged him to not drag Classy down, and added that even if Yuma just offended him, he is still bad news, since he acts so stupid in front of Class D like a livestock, and this made them wonder if they should just start calling him Botho. Meanwhile, Yuma continued to ask him to not take them seriously, to which he agreed, but he thought that it was weird because in the original story, he wasn't supposed to be called Botho at this point of time, so it made him wonder if it was because Yuma intervened. Regardless of that, he still feels really out of place. Afterwards, their instructor Hajime finally arrived and reminded them that just like what he said last week, they need groups in order to dive into dungeons, so he will give them an opportunity and introduce themselves again, which made Botho exclaim that he really loves him. After that, Hajime instructed them that for the order, they will start from their grades, so he declared that it will start with Yuma. So he then introduced himself and informed them that he came from the East Middle School in Tokyo. He also mentioned that he uses a one-handed sword and declared his aspiration to become a warrior. The other students continued to take their turn, while Botho thought that this was bad, because he realized that he didn't really say anything today besides yeah, since he was keeping a low profile so he don't hinder the story. But at the very least, he also needs to form a party, so he would need to be more approachable and more cheerful. With that, his turn finally arrived. With full enthusiasm, he introduced himself by stating that he wields a bat as his weapon and aspires to become a priest, while also striking a pose and expressing his gratitude afterward. But he noticed that they were all unfazed, while Kaoru on the other hand felt embarrassed for him, and Hajime was just silent. He reminded them that they will be moving on to orientation, and he also informed them that they will use the facilities around the guild even after they graduate, so they better take notes of that. After it, the students started leaving while asking for each other's name and suggesting to team up. Meanwhile, Botho was left inside still posing, so he then guessed that solo isn't so bad. Afterwards, his classmates started walking in line while he tried to catch up with them. Soon after, Hajime showed them the facilities including the arena that other than play off, they can also train their skill and adjust their strength. After that, he showed them to the medical office where a priest is always on standby, so whether they are injured from the dungeon or practice they can go there. Lastly, he believes that some of them have dove into dungeons but walking around on the first and second floor, they must bring company. That's why he wants all of them to form groups of 3 to 5 people. This led Botho to jokingly promise that he is going to kill him. But Hajime also explained to them that it's to ensure they can be easily located if they wander off, and emphasizing that it's more of a formality. With that, he instructed them to gather in the plaza in front of the guild in 1 hour, and if they needed to, they could also go to the cafeteria to have lunch. So after Hajime left, the students immediately started moving. So Botho then realized that he is not the only one that is worried, since everyone wants to hurry up and form a party because they all want to level up. Suddenly he was pushed away because he was in their way. So he then realized that he also needed to do his best, and he began approaching the others. However, he only heard some stating that he must be joking, while others replied that they were not interested, and some apologized to him because their group was already full. He thought that it's no use because he couldn't find anyone, since they made their party based on relationships, so he now guesses that his school life will greatly affect his life as an adventurer. And since it seems like they don't have time to hang out with a failure like him, So he thought that it doesn't matter anyway because it seems like Yuma has made his party, which made him feel envious of him because he is getting surrounded. However, he observed that he declined them and noticed him coming his way. Suddenly, Yuma called him and invited him to team up, which left him puzzled and wondered if that was some kind of death spell or something. Still, he wants him to stop joking around even though he wants an excellent party member. But if he keeps interacting with Yuma, the story that he knows will be in shambles, and the only reason that he is still alive in this world is because of that knowledge that he has. So if the actions of Yuma change the story of Dunix, then he will really have nothing left in this world. So he planned to just thank him and refuse. However, he wonders if has any reason to refuse, since initially he wants to use Kaoru as an excuse, but he can't do that because she wouldn't be happy if he did that, and it seems like she also looked in their way, since Kaoru is supposed to team up with Yuma, so he begged her to just take Yuma away. With that, she exclaimed that she was the only one left and asked Yuma if she could join his party, which left Botho in disbelief. Afterwards, he couldn't believe why he was in the same group even though Kaoru was supposed to be against doing something with him. However, he thought that since he is in the same group, then he can ask about the main character's situation. So he then tried to call out for Yuma, but Kaoru suddenly intervened and gave him a look that is asking him not to do anything stupid with her party member, which he already knows, since in reality, the Botho in Dunix gets jealous of the main character and starts attacking him. So Kaoru is absolutely in the right to stop him, but that would be if it's against the real Botho. Suddenly, Yuma then asked him if he was trying to say something just now. So he immediately thought of the recent situations and noticed that Kaoru is looking, so he better not make her too wary of him, but also not to make it too weird or else she will be suspicious. With that, he asks Yuma his reason why he became an adventurer in the first place and explains that he was just wondering. After a pause, Yuma answered that it's because he admired them and explained that it's just like when they saw adventurers when they were young, and since it only existed inside a television, it gave him what ifs and he had been thinking about it ever since. So he guessed that it's because of admiration, and then apologized to Botho because he couldn't give him a proper answer. After hearing it, he remembered that Yuma was originally only a vessel where the players interact. However, in this world, he grapples with the admiration he expressed and acknowledging that he himself considered it not a good motive. And even with the power difference, he still stood his ground as a mere high school freshman, so even not as the character, he wanted to support him as a human.